Hi guys, it's Marc Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Marc Zicree of Space Command, and I'm here to give you an update on Space Command and the new Twilight Zone companion which I'm writing, and also talked about Comic-Con, our triumphant return from Comic-Con and what occurred there. So a lot is happening, a lot is going on. So where to start? Well, it's the beginning of my work day today, and it's going to be another busy day. I'm writing the new draft of the second Space Command film, Forgiveness. Elaine's going through all the dailies on our first Space Command film so that we can sit down with our editor, Dave Edison. We're editing the film. We're about two-thirds through the film in terms of the refined rough cut. We've been meeting and discussing VFX shots with a number of VFX artists here and in Italy, Germany, all around the world. And so that's actively moving. We're designing CG interiors and spaceship shots and a new trailer. We're planning a crowdfunding campaign for post-production to complete all the visual effects shots. We'll be talking about that very, very soon. And of course, still selling shares in Film 2, which we're going to be shooting in the next few months as part of the 6 films we're shooting, the Space Command films, that we hope will be the Space Command TV series. Lots to talk about in that regard. Meanwhile, I'm also writing the new edition of the Twilight Zone Companion, which will be an ebook from my publisher, Silman James. So I'm going through hundreds of photos. There'll be many more photos, including color photos of Rod Serling, many very cool things, color photos from Eye of the Beholder, just things that you've never seen before. And it's going to be astonishing, plus video, all sorts of things, because on an ebook we can link to various video files. There'll be scripts that I wrote for the new Twilight Zone when CBS brought it back, a very famous censored script that did not get shot. And many, many more wonderful extras. And we'll also, of course, link to my Mr. Sci-Fi video, the half-hour-long story that I tell of Rod Serling and Ray Bradbury's friendship and how it went awry. And so I'll be continuing to do updates on the progress of the new Twilight Zone companion. And but meanwhile, Space Command's going very, very well. And let's talk about Comic-Con. So I was on 4 panels and a signing, and the BBC interviewed me for over a half hour, as well as many podcasts interviewed me, and the signing was terrific. It was Doug Jones and many of our cast, Ethan McDowell, Brian McClure, David Raiklin, our co-producer and composer. The line went as far as the eye could see. We were signing through the entire time. Ironically, Guillermo del Toro was signing across the way from us, but the crowd was so thick between his crowd and ours that we couldn't even catch his eye. We couldn't. We would have loved to have had Guillermo come over, but we did get photos of him, and we'll post those. And I emailed him that the irony of that almost ships that passed in the night. So it was very, very fun. And then in terms of the panels, I was on, well, we did, of course, the Space Command panel, which again was a triumph. We showed the making of featurette. We had many of our cast there: Mira Furlan, Bob Picardo, again Ethan McDowell, Brian McClure, etc., etc. Many of our cast and crew. Very, very receptive audience, good crowd, and we gave out posters, and we're going to post the entire Space Command video online, so you can share it and see it, and we'll send it, of course, to our Space Command backers. But it was terrific. And then I was on a panel with David Brin about alien civilizations, and I was talking about my feeling that if there is a technological alien civilization out there, and I think there actually are many, that will be very, very different from humanity. And I was also on a panel about world building, talking about Star Trek and Star Wars and sliders and the Lord of the Rings and all these different fantasy universes and science fiction universes, including Space Command, of course. And that was great fun, and the questions were extremely lively. And then Brandon Easton, my friend who just got hired on as a writer on Agent Carter, he was moderating a panel that I was on, talking about how to break into TV and comics as a writer. And once again, the audience was very receptive to what we were saying. And I mean, one thing that's great about Comic-Con is that you get to see your audience interact with the fans, interact with other writers, and meet new writers. There's a show called The Expanse that my friend Marc Fergus is running, along with his partner Hawk Ostby. They wrote Children of Men and Iron Man. And they're also running the show with Narain Shankar, whom I know from Star Trek The Next Generation. And so they screened the first episode, which I quite like. It's based on a series of novels. The first one's Leviathan Wakes, and the novelists were there on the panel because they're now also writing the show, which I think bodes well. And it's interesting because it's not like Space Command, but it is set in a future dealing with Mars and the asteroid belt and the colonized solar system in the 23rd century. And it was fun to see someone with a different take, and yet something that is a fellow traveler, a partner with Space Command. So it's very fun. And I reached out to the novelists, and I reached out to Hawk and Marc Fergus and Lorraine, and we were emailing back and forth afterwards. And I was celebrating their success. I think The Expanse will be a very good show, and I'm glad to see what they're up to. We all work so hard on all of this stuff, and it's so fun to share it with the world. And then, of course, the other great news was that Christina Moses, who played Sulu's daughter in World Enough in Time, the Star Trek episode Michael Reeves and I did with George Takei, that was nominated for the Hugo and the Nebula. Christina Moses played Sulu's daughter. She's spectacular. If you've never seen it, go on to marczicree.com and you can click through and watch the entire episode. But my dear friend Christina Moses just got cast in the lead in Containment, a new series that Julie Plec has created. Julie Plec of the Vampire Diaries has created for the CW, and they showed the first episode of that, and Christina was on the panel, and I got to sit front row center and see that and celebrate with Christina her triumph. And I think that show will be a big hit, and Christina certainly deserves it. And she'll then be in Space Command. She's going to be in the coming Space Command films. So that will be something we can all enjoy. And so it's fun. It's fun, this conversation between us and the world. And it's a two-way conversation, as you know. But so that's sort of. And here's another fun story. So I'm at Comic-Con, and it's 10:30 at night, and I'm getting my car from valet parking there in the old town quarter of San Diego, and the streets are crowded, and I look and I see a man walking toward me, just kind of walking down the street all by his lonesome, and it's Ron Perlman. And so we'd met at various points in the past, but not to where we really knew each other. And so as he passes me, I say to him, I wrote a book with Guillermo del Toro. And he stopped and he said, "What book?" And I said, "Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities." And he said, "I'm in that book." And I said, "Yes, I know." And I said, "There's a story that Guillermo tells about you that I found very, very moving." And so I told him the story that Guillermo told me, which was that when they were shooting Guillermo's first film, Kronos, down in Mexico, and they were, shooting on a just by the skin of their teeth, and very, very impoverished. And the only American actor was Ron Perlman, who already had been in Beauty and the Beast. And Guillermo comes to Ron one day while they're shooting and says, "I cannot pay you now, but I promise you, you will be paid." And so Ron walks to the nearest payphone and calls his agent, and his agent says, "Get on the next plane out and fly back to L.A." And Ron knows that if he does that, the movie will collapse. And he has to decide whether to trust Guillermo and stay and complete the film, or go home, and that will be that. And he decided to stay. And he went and he completed the film, and he trusted Guillermo. And Guillermo, of course, did pay him. And then, of course, they went on to great triumphs in Hellboy and many other films and TV shows, and both of them had spectacular careers. So I told him how moving that story was to me, and that I share it with many of the young people that I mentor. And I think it's really a testament to coming from your heart, and coming from creative passion, and building a team of people you love to work with and who respect and regard you. And he said, and he got kind of shy, and he said, "Well, they were a great bunch of guys. I couldn't let them down." And I thought that was really a marvelous moment to be sharing with Ron Perlman, and he's someone I very much want to work with as well in the future. He's just a spectacular actor. So we finished up Comic-Con, came back here. We're working on Space Command, working on the Twilight Zone Companion, working on all the various things we're working on Mr. Sci-Fi, the Mr. Sci-Fi podcasts and videos. You can check us out at Mr. Sci-Fi channel on YouTube, or Mr. Sci-Fi podcast on iTunes. And that's about it for now, but if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you're interested in investing in Space Command, or want to we have a Patreon account. You can actually put in smaller amounts of money too. And we're also going to be in the near future having a Space Command convention at our studio, and you can actually come to our studio, and there'll be panels and with our cast and crew. It's going to be quite wonderful. So that's it for now. So like, share, spread the word, and thanks for everything you are and do. It's great to be making Space Command. It's great to be sharing my world with you and the world at large. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.